I have been working at the company for many years and have a great relationship with my colleagues. When my friend and coworker Bob announced his wedding, everyone in our department received an invitation, except me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but eventually, I found out that I had been deliberately left out. Bob and I have been working together for years, and for the most part, we got along well, until his wedding. He joined our department around the same time as I did, and with a team of 15 people, we had built a pretty solid bond. So, when Bob announced his engagement on a Zoom call, everyone was thrilled for him, myself included. Then, about 5 months ago, invitations started going out. One by one, my colleagues received theirs. Except me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a delay. But after a few weeks, it was clear, I hadn't been invited. I decided to confront Bob directly. His expression was awkward, almost guilty, as he told me there wasn't enough space. He assured me it wasn't personal and even promised to send me a wedding favor and a piece of cake. Oh, and he also asked me to keep quiet about it. I didn't argue. I just said, okay, and walked away. But the truth? It stung. Badly. I hate feeling excluded, and this time, it was worse because I was literally the only one in the department left out. And to make things worse, I love weddings. I never mentioned anything to anyone, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Then, 3 weeks ago, the wedding happened. Everyone came back raving about how amazing it was, the stunning vineyard, the great food, the party. And apparently, guests were given a dozen fresh apple cider donuts as favors. Which, by the way, I never received. Then came Monday. My coworker, Sherry, casually asked why I hadn't been at the wedding. Turns out, Bob told everyone I had gotten sick and couldn't make it. I was caught off guard. I told her the truth, I wasn't invited. She looked completely shocked, and from there, the news spread. Soon, half a dozen coworkers came to ask me if it was true. Today, Bob came back from his honeymoon, and the moment he saw me, I knew he was pissed. He cornered me in the break room, visibly annoyed, and told me I shouldn't have told Sherry. That it wasn't a big deal and that I was making this into something it wasn't. I looked him dead in the eye and asked, how would you feel if you were the only one left out of something all your co-workers were invited to? We argued for a bit before he stormed off. My project lead must have overheard because later, she asked if I was okay. I didn't want to blow this up even more, so I played it cool. But my other co-workers, they weren't so subtle. Several of them told me Bob was out of line and that I should have been invited. Look, I get it, it was his wedding, and he could invite whoever he wanted. But I also have a right to feel hurt, right? Was I wrong for being honest when people asked? Oh, and one more thing, every single person in our department got a +1. Even the only other unmarried person, a 26-year-old coworker, was invited solo. Meanwhile, I, at 30, with no relationship drama, was just left out. Now, I can't help but wonder if Bob's wife didn't want me there. The only time we ever interacted was at a company holiday party years ago, where we geeked out about Super Mario Maker and Breath of the Wild for 15 minutes. I can't think of anything I could have done to piss her off. She even added me online to download some of my Mario Maker levels. That was 3 years ago. Maybe she just liked my levels. For those curious, I'm just a regular white guy. So are Bob and his wife. There were plenty of colleagues of different backgrounds at the wedding, so this wasn't about race. And appearance-wise, I'm not classically attractive, but I'm tall, 6 feet 4 inches, fit, and I work out regularly. Bob is good-looking too, shorter but still tall, and extremely charismatic. I can't imagine he'd see me as a threat. At the end of the day, I didn't want to turn this into office drama. We work remotely 3 days a week, so avoiding him isn't hard. Update. First off, thanks to everyone who weighed in. Well, things just got more interesting. Today, Bob and I were both in the office. He walked up to me and asked, "Can we talk?" Bob suggested we grab a drink after work to talk things over, with his wife, Pam, joining us. I agreed. At the bar, both of them apologized. They admitted they had made me feel excluded, and Bob even apologized for lying and getting mad at me. Then, they finally explained why I hadn't been invited. Apparently, back in 2019, they attended a massive wedding that was completely ruined when drunk single guys started harassing women. A few husbands and boyfriends got angry, a fight broke out, people got arrested, and the whole night turned into a disaster. I could hardly believe it, until they pulled up some videos on Facebook. It did look like a full-on brawl. They even showed me a few Facebook posts confirming the chaos. Pam admitted that the experience stuck with her. She swore that on her wedding day, there would be no single men. And she followed through. Every guest was either a married couple, a single woman, or a vetted single man. She clarified that there were about 10 single guys at the wedding, but they were either family members or part of the wedding party. And, in her words, this decision worked, women at the wedding felt safe, and the night went smoothly. She reassured me that it wasn't personal. But, she also said she would do it again. I asked if she and Bob seriously thought I couldn't control myself. She admitted that Bob fought hard for me to be invited, but she wouldn't budge. Their compromise. She'd explain if necessary, and in return, Bob got full control over choosing the honeymoon destination. Then, she hit me with something unexpected. She mentioned that she had a sister around my age. And, apparently, I was exactly her type. So much so that Pam specifically wanted to keep me away from her. That stung. But then she added, "It's for your own good." According to Pam, her sister was wild, her words, not mine. She didn't want me getting involved with her. Bob chimed in, admitting that he should have handled things better. But at the end of the day, he figured I wouldn't have wanted to go to a wedding alone anyway. I told them, straight up, that it hurt to know they saw me as some kind of potential creep. Pam insisted she thought I was a great guy, smart, funny, but she just wanted a drama-free wedding. To make amends, they insisted on making it up to me. I told them it wasn't necessary, but Pam was adamant. So, we agreed on a fancy dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in town this weekend. So, yeah. The issue wasn't me, but I still feel a little insulted. At least I'll get a free dinner out of it. Edit, a lot of you are saying I'm being too passive, letting them walk all over me after basically calling me a creep. And, maybe you're right. Normally, I try to avoid conflict and keep my dignity, but this time, maybe that's not the best approach. By the way, I don't think seeing the best in people makes someone naive. Anyway, about an hour ago, I spoke to my project lead and told her everything. She advised me to document this with HR, just in case it leads to a hostile work environment. So, I have a meeting with them on Monday. I don't want to file a formal complaint, I just want to have a record in case things go sideways. Honestly, I don't expect any issues. Bob doesn't seem like that kind of guy. But then again, I've been wrong before. So, based on some of the advice I've gotten, I won't be going to dinner with Bob and Pam. Instead, I'll be asking for public apologies, ones that don't make it sound like I was some sort of liability at their wedding. Oh, and I still want my damn apple cider donuts. Fresh ones. Not store-bought. Final update and extra context. Before I wrap this up, I want to clear something up. A lot of people asked why I felt entitled to an invite. I didn't. Did I want to be invited? Sure. But as I've said before, if they had just been honest from the start, I wouldn't have been nearly as upset. It was their wedding, they had every right to make their own guest list. My problem wasn't with not getting invited, it was the fact that they tried to lie to me about it. Also, no, Bob and I never had those kinds of conversations. Some people assumed we talked about women at work, but that's never been a thing. At least, not in my department. Maybe women discuss that kind of stuff with each other, but I wouldn't know. I just chose to take Pam's word for it about her experiences with men. Monday morning, I showed up at the office 2 hours early, hoping to avoid Bob. No luck. He must have had the same idea because he got in an hour before his usual time. He looked wrecked. Not just physically tired, but mentally drained, like something had completely broken him. I had seen Bob exhausted before, late-night project crunches, even the occasional hangover, but this was different. He nodded at me with a blank expression, and I gave him a similar nod in return before we both got to work. Later that morning, I had my scheduled meeting with HR. Sally, our HR manager, is a no-nonsense type, sharp and professional. I walked her through the entire situation, from the lack of an invitation to the weird phone calls and the sudden push for friendship. After listening carefully, she took a deep breath and said, "In 15 years in HR, I have never heard a dumber situation." She assured me that I was right to document everything, even if I didn't want to file a formal complaint. According to her, this wasn't technically a workplace issue since it was a private event, but she also said that the way Pam was fixating on me now was borderline concerning. Before I left, she gave me a piece of advice: keep your distance, don't engage beyond professional work matters, and if anything else happens, let me know immediately. I nodded, thanked her, and left the office feeling slightly better. But things weren't over yet. That night, Bob called me. Drunk. I didn't want to answer, but something in me said I should. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I wanted closure. His voice was slurred, but he wasn't aggressive. Just sad. "Look, man," he started, "I fed up. I really did. I should have fought harder for you. I should have told Pam that you're not like those guys, but she wouldn't listen, and I just gave up. I just gave up. I didn't say anything, just let him keep talking. She makes all the decisions, man. Everything. And I let her. I let her because it's easier that way, you know. She told me we'd regret it if we let any single guys in, and I caved. I always cave." He took a deep breath. "And now she's mad because you don't want to be her friend. She's been talking about you all weekend. All weekend. Like, what the F***, man. She's more upset about this than I am." That part sent a chill down my spine. "Look, I just want things to go back to normal," he muttered. "I don't want this to get worse." I sighed. "Bob, I'm not looking for drama. I just wanted honesty. That's it." "I know," he said. "I know, man." Then he was silent for a few moments before finally saying, "I should go." I agreed and hung up. Now I don't know what to make of this. Pam's obsession with this whole thing is creeping me out. Bob seems completely beaten down, like a man with no say in his own life. And now I have the uncomfortable feeling that this isn't really about me anymore. Something's off. I just don't know what. Bob and I sat down at our usual bar, the same place I had first met with him and Pam. I half expected her to be there, but she wasn't. Still, I stayed on guard. Bob looked exhausted, like a man carrying the weight of a massive mistake. Right away, he apologized, again. But this time, it felt even more genuine than before. I told him he didn't need to keep apologizing. I had already understood everything. He shook his head. "No, man. You don't understand. It's worse than you think." And then, he spilled everything. The full story. Bob had fought hard to get Pam to change her mind about banning single men from the wedding. They argued about it for months, with plenty of people offering different compromises. He suggested a smaller wedding, just close friends and family, but Pam refused. She had always dreamed of a huge wedding, and a small one simply wasn't an option for her. Her parents even suggested hiring extra security, but Pam wouldn't budge. She wanted zero risk of problems, even if it meant cutting people out. She told Bob, "A few single guys can handle not being invited to one wedding." Bob had a lot of male friends who wanted to attend, and he knew they'd be upset. But when he confronted Pam about it, she shot back, "I'm making sacrifices too. I have male friends who wanted to come as well." Eventually, Bob caved. He told her, "Fine. If this is happening, I want everyone to know it wasn't my decision." Pam promised to take full responsibility if things went south. She never expected the backlash. As compensation for giving up the fight, she let Bob pick their honeymoon destination. If anyone's curious, they went to the French Riviera. The wedding itself. The reception and party went great, according to Bob. Women got drunk out of their minds, barely able to stand, but they felt safe. Ironically, a small but loud group of women complained about the lack of attractive men to dance with. And, unsurprisingly, the few approved single guys at the wedding were aggressively flirted with all night. Bob said Pam didn't care about that part. As far as she was concerned, her plan had worked. The backlash. Then they got home. And that's when shit hit the fan. Pam's friends found out the real reason some of them weren't invited. One of her close friends accidentally let it slip. And then, chaos. People were furious. She got bombarded with angry calls and messages from friends who realized she had essentially labeled them as potential predators. Her attempts to explain only made things worse. She lost a lot of friends over this. One guy even texted her, "If you think I'm a rapist, then why the F*** were we ever friends?" Asterisk. Pam has been crying for days. Work has become unbearable for her, and according to Bob, she might have to quit her job entirely. Bob downed another drink, his words getting sloppier. It's not just her that lost friends, he admitted. A lot of his friends were furious, too. When they found out why they weren't invited, they cut him off completely. The day of the wedding, 6 of his closest friends, guys he had known for years, decided to go on a fishing trip instead, as a giant F*** to him and Pam. Then, to top it all off, they donated $500 and a bunch of supplies to a local women's shelter, just to be petty. Bob was devastated. None of them respond to his calls or texts anymore. Even their families are upset about this. Pam's parents are publicly standing by her, but in private. They've been ripping her apart for how she handled things. Bob rubbed his face. Man. I lost everyone over this. And honestly, I believed him. Pam was paying the price for her decision. And Bob, who tried to fight it but ultimately gave in, was now alone. His voice was barely above a whisper when he said, "I don't know how to fix this." And for the first time in this entire situation, I actually felt bad for him. At this point, Pam only has a handful of people still backing her, her bridesmaids and 3 close friends. Even they, according to Bob, have started questioning things. One night, in a full-blown breakdown, Pam screamed, "Why can't anyone understand my point of view?" The situation had already been ridiculous, but now it was reaching an entirely new level of absurdity. Bob was drunk by now, but I pushed him to keep talking. He admitted that, at first, Pam was completely convinced she had done the right thing. But now, doubt was creeping in. She finally acknowledged that while people understood her intentions, most thought her execution was way too extreme, and, frankly, a little sexist. Their arguments over this whole mess had been constant. Instead of enjoying the honeymoon phase, Bob had been building resentment. In his own words, "She took away my friends and ***ed up our lives over a stupid party." Asterisk. Then, out of nowhere, Bob dropped another bombshell: "Pam actually liked me. One of her biggest regrets was that she never got to know me better before the wedding." I raised an eyebrow. And how exactly did she decide I was such a great person after a 15-minute conversation 3 years ago? Bob just laughed. "Dude, I don't know. Maybe she's got a crush on you or something." I laughed too, but it did make things weirder. And what about Beth? According to Bob, Pam's sister, Beth, was wild, but not in the way Pam had made it seem. Beth was actually incredibly smart, successful, and well-respected. She just happened to enjoy an active dating life. That was it. She wasn't some uncontrollable homewrecker, just a woman who liked what she liked. And here's where things got really interesting. Pam had actively tried to keep me away from Beth. Why? Because we would get along too well. Bob swore that Pam wasn't lying when she said Beth and I were extremely similar, both in personality and interests. And apparently, I was exactly Beth's type: tall, athletic, and nerdy. Pam didn't want us to meet because she knew there was a chance we'd hit it off. And at that point, I couldn't help it, I was curious. I asked Bob if he had a picture of her. He pulled up her Instagram. And, damn. Beth was stunning. She looked almost exactly like Pam, just a little cavia. Honestly, seeing that only pissed me off at Pam more. Bob admitted that Pam had always been a little jealous of Beth, which made no sense to me, they looked almost identical. But Pam had gone out of her way to prevent us from meeting. Bob grinned and said, "Wanna get some revenge? I can give Beth your Instagram and even put in a good word." I laughed, but he was dead serious. Pam had been desperate to make things right with me, not just because she felt guilty, but because I had apparently made a huge impression on her. She was grasping at straws, trying to make new friends since she had lost almost all of hers. Bob swore he'd keep her in check and make sure she didn't bother me anymore. By then, he was very drunk. And that's when he finally admitted something that left me speechless. Bob had doubts about his marriage. He confessed that he wasn't sure he had made the right choice. The entire wedding process, especially the aftermath, had been a nightmare. He didn't want to leave Pam over this, but her decisions had ruined his life. I was in shock. Bob practically begged me not to say anything to Pam. I promised I wouldn't. Before we left, he insisted on paying for our drinks. He planned to take public transport home, but I forced him to call an Uber. He argued at first but eventually gave in. An hour later, I got a text from Pam. From Bob's phone. "Thanks for taking care of my husband. You're a good person." I didn't respond. And that's where things stand right now. I hope this is the end of the drama. But something tells me Pam isn't done yet. Final update, the date with Beth. Hey everyone, nothing dramatic happened, but I do have a small update. Bob followed through, he gave Beth my Instagram. She messaged me last week. We started talking. And you know what? It went really well. So well, in fact, that we met for coffee last weekend. Sorry to disappoint the skeptics, but the date was amazing. We talked about everything, our hobbies, our jobs, our families, our future plans. Bob wasn't lying, we're insanely similar. Down to the most random stuff, like certain food preferences. It went so well that we met up again after work for drinks. And yeah, that date was just as good. Now, here's the part one think you'll all love. This weekend, Beth and I are going on a hike together. And on the way, we're stopping at the exact vineyard where Bob and Pam had their wedding. Why? Because I'm finally getting my damn fresh apple cider donuts. Final chapter, the perfect ending. Hey everyone, I just want to start by thanking you all for following me through this insane story. Also, a huge thanks for the congratulations on my relationship with Beth, it really means a lot. Now, onto the final update. As I've mentioned, Beth and I had been seeing each other for a while. She's an incredible woman, smart, funny, driven, and ridiculously kind. I'm completely captivated by her. Last Saturday, we went on our long-awaited hike. And let me tell you, it was perfect. The weather was amazing, the fall leaves were breathtaking, and the view from the top of the mountain. Absolutely surreal. We had a picnic at the peak, and during a quiet moment, I finally gathered the courage to ask, "Would you like to be my girlfriend?" Beth laughed, rolled her eyes, and said, "Wow. That's the most cliché thing ever, asking me out at a scenic mountain overlook." Then she grinned and added, "Good thing I love clichés." She said yes. We sealed it with a kiss, and just like that, my entire world felt brighter. The donut quest. On our way back, we finally stopped at the vineyard where Bob and Pam had their wedding. And you know what? It was beautiful. Rolling vineyards, stunning mountain views, honestly, I could see why they picked it. But I wasn't there for the scenery. I was there for my damn apple cider donuts. Funny enough, we got there just before they sold out of the last batch. We almost missed them, but luckily, we managed to snag some of the final fresh ones. And let me tell you, they were worth the wait. Absolutely delicious. No regrets. The best weekend ever. After the vineyard, we went back to Beth's place and cooked dinner together. I have never had such a perfect date in my life. Everything just felt right. When it was time for me to leave, I grabbed my keys, and Beth snatched them out of my hands. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you seriously think you're leaving, you're insane." I swear, I had the goofiest grin on my face. We spent the rest of the weekend together. Sunday morning, we had a slow, cozy brunch, then spent the day walking around town, holding hands, exploring little shops, and just being together. When we finally had to say goodbye that evening, I swear, I almost teared up. This might sound dramatic, but the whole day at work on Monday, I felt miserable, like a lovesick teenager who couldn't stand being away from her. And then Pam found out. Sunday night, Beth and I made our relationship Instagram official. Guess who saw it? Pam. She immediately messaged Beth. How do you know him? Beth casually replied, Bob introduced us. Pam's only response. I knew this would happen. We laughed about it, wondering if this meant future drama. But honestly, we don't care. Pam can be as mad as she wants. The final goodbye. Monday morning, I approached Bob to thank him for introducing me to Beth. He told me that he and Pam had gotten into yet another argument about it. But then he shrugged and said, I don't care. It was worth it to get you two together. And also, huge middle finger to Pam. I jokingly offered to buy him a drink as a thank you, but he waved it off. Don't worry about it, man. It's the least I could do. And that's it. I think this is truly the end of this ridiculous saga. Pam is clearly unhappy about Beth and me dating, but honestly, that's not my problem. I'm just incredibly happy. Beth is the kind of person you meet once in a lifetime. And if anything else happens, you know I'll be back to update you. Peace and love.